I mean, if we're concentrating on American Jewry and you look at young Americans, most don't know their story. Most don't know where their family came from. Most don't realize that when their families came here, maybe 5 generations ago, they were not citizens of the country that they came from. I mean, if we're not teaching our young ones our story, how do we expect them to know, and how do we expect them to support Jewish causes?
This episode of Think Twice is sponsored by the Jewish Future Promise, ensuring a vibrant and thriving future for Jews and Israel. Hello, and welcome to Think Twice. This week we have an interesting conversation for you with Michael Leven and Hadara Ishak from the Jewish Future Promise. But before we start today's program, I want to remind you, as always, to like this video and podcast, subscribe to JNS, and click on the bell for notifications. Also, you still don't have to wait a full week for more of our content. There is a Jonathan Tobin daily podcast where I share more news and analysis with you about the most significant issues we're facing today. You can find the daily show under Jonathan Tobin Daily on the JNS channel wherever you get your podcasts. Also, JNS's inaugural International Policy Summit will be held this April in Jerusalem. Click the link in the description below to request registration in order to attend. And now to today's program. Optimism about the future of American Jewry is not in great supply these days. For the last few decades, concerns about demography, rising rates of assimilation, alienation, and fewer young people choosing to create Jewish families have created a sense among many that a vibrant Jewish community in the United States is a thing of the past. Those concerns were rooted at their core in the freedom to opt out of Jewish life offered by an American society that no longer erected the same barriers for Jews that they had in the past. But in recent years, those worries have been amplified by a new threat, or rather an old one, to Jewish life in the form of a surge in anti-Semitism that many of those who grew up in the decades after the Second World War thought was a thing of the past. This massive and unprecedented increase in anti-Semitism is coming from sectors that many Jews thought of as allies, but now, after their indoctrination in critical race theory, intersectionality, and settler colonialism theory, view the state of Israel and Jews everywhere as white oppressors. This has led to a situation where Jews are targeted for intimidation and shunning, if not violence, at institutions where they once felt at home. What should we do about all this? The answers are fairly simple. When it comes to anti-Semitism, the correct response is one that is rooted in the same formula for coping with assimilation. We need to fund Jewish institutions and groups, including schools, camp trips to Israel, that educate Jewish kids in Jewish values and knowledge that give them a strong sense of identity, as well as arming them with the information and historical examples that will enable them to stand up to the anti-Semites, no matter where they come from, the right, the left, or Islamist hate groups. But doing that is not just a matter of endorsing such efforts. Backing efforts that reinforce a sense of Jewish peoplehood in young Jews, as well as supporting Israel. And that requires revival of Jewish philanthropy in a country where, despite the great generosity of many Jews, it has been in steep decline for many years. Two people who rightly think this must be a priority are Michael Leven and Hadara Ishak, respectively the founder and the president and chief operating officer of Jewish Future Promise, an organization dedicated to encouraging individuals to commit to the idea that if any charitable contributions are made upon their passing, whether that be $10 or $10 million, at least 50% should be allocated to Jewish causes and or the state of Israel. Michael Leven is a successful businessman in the hospitality industry who served as president and chief operating officer of the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the chairman and chief executive officer of U.S. Franchise Systems, the president and chief operating officer of Holiday Inn Worldwide, and the president of Days Inn of America. In 2020, he founded Jewish Future Promise. He also serves on the boards of the AEPI, Fraternity Foundation, Jewish National Fund, and the Marcus Foundation, and is an honorary board member of the Birthright Israel Foundation. Hadara Ishak has had a varied career in both profit and not-for-profit worlds. She has been an entrepreneur, building a successful women's clothing manufacturing company, a vice president of distribution and a co-producer at Imagination Productions, an independent documentary film company, and has also served as vice president of partnerships at Open Door Media. Michael Leven and Hadara Ishak, welcome to Think Twice.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to join us today. I want to start with you, Mike, and ask you to tell us how you came to start the Jewish Future Promise and why you thought this idea was not only important, but needed an organization designed to promote it.
Well, basically, I watched Bill Gates and Warren Buffett do a pledge for billionaires to give their money to charity. I began to wonder about the $6 billion or more that diaspora Jews are providing to support the Jewish organizations, the Jewish world, and the state of Israel through donations in the next generation and the generation after that. They had legacy programs, some which were working, some weren't working. And I said, well, why can't the Jews do this? And I thought about the idea of a Jewish Future Promise originally. And I talked to my friend Bernie Marcus, who was an advisor for me for many years, who recently passed away. And I asked him, does it have any, what do you think about it? He thought it was a great idea, said, just do it. So I formed an organization with my own funding. I take no funds from anybody else. Hired a couple of people, set up a process to do it. And we began, I guess, like any entrepreneurial exercise. And everybody we talked to thought it was a no-brainer idea, where for anybody leaving anything for charity, any Jewish person or other, leaving anything to charity, that would, in fact, 50% or more be given of the charitable gifts to Jewish causes and Israel. That was the original idea behind it. It was not a legal document. It was a moral commitment. And we tested it in various Jewish organizations with rather limited success. And it was very slow going. But that was the way we started. And all of a sudden, we found different ways to market and different ways. We added more people. We added a youth promise through Jewish organizations that actually is working pretty well. And as of today, we're at 100,000 signatures. And so we did that yesterday, I think, afternoon. Hadara, am I not correct?
And now we're already at 100,200.
We're at 100,200, right?
We're growing daily.
and it's taken a while. I mean, we got hit with COVID right away. It really slowed it down. We added some other people. We changed some of our marketing firms. We changed different strategies. And I think we're on our way to what my original idea was, is to get 1 million people to do this. And if we got 1 million people, we'd be able to really buy insurance from the diaspora world to support these causes after most of us are gone. That was the idea. And I'm very pleased about what's happened in the last few days, in the last couple of years. It seems to have caught on. And I feel very good about it when I say, gee, we have 102,000, 100,200 signers, and everybody says, gee, that's great. Well, it's still a long way from 1 million, but we're planning to continue to chug along and do what we can to get to that 1 million. And that's my goal. It's my personal legacy to the Jewish people and the state of Israel, both of which are most important to me and Hadara and our families and everybody else. So I think that was the idea. and we're in the execution model. So that's
Jonathan, I'd like to add to that.
Sure,
If I
please.
may. So when Mike Leven came to me and told me that right now we're going through a $68 trillion financial transfer from one generation to the next. And if we're looking at charitable dollars, we're looking at $6.3 trillion. And if we look deeper into it and try to figure out how much of that is Jewish philanthropy, through resources, we found out that at least 18 to 20% of that is Jewish philanthropy. And then when we look deeper into that, we wanted to see how much of Jewish philanthropy goes towards Jewish causes in Israel. And that was a shocker. I mean, things have changed since then, but our first diagnosis of it was only 11% of Jewish philanthropy was going towards Jewish causes in Israel, meaning Jews were giving, but 89% of Jewish giving was going towards other great things, but not Jewish causes.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided that we want to change that trend. Now, obviously, since October 7th, things have changed, but that was the main vehicle. Secondly, we realized that there's not enough conversations among families about their own Jewish values, their culture, their tradition, and their family stories of where they came from. What is their family stories? How do we transfer our traditions from one generation to another? And that's when we decided to sort of encompass that into the Jewish Future Promise as well.
Mm. Now, Jewish Future Promise seeks to encourage a purely voluntary, non-binding promise. But, you've spoken of wanting 1 million. What are the specific goals beyond that you've set for it? What are you hoping that leads from this?
My view of the hope is more than the money. It's the conversation. It's for parents or grandparents who have signed these particular promises without the legal obligation, whether they have $1, $10, or $1 million, or 10 million, or 100 million, is to talk to their children, have the conversation about why they should be part of the promise and what it will yield in the future. In other words, I'm really trying to break the pattern of Jewish living and giving that has happened in our history all the time. Once we assimilate to a certain level in every society, in every situation, we forget what our obligations are. As Maimonides once said, your obligation is to your family first, to the Jewish people next, and to the rest of the world after that. And in the United States, I saw through my own context and my own vision of philanthropy that was going on with major philanthropists in the Jewish world, is they were doing what I would think a lot, but not enough with their progeny, and ensure the fact that they were teaching the progeny their responsibility to go on. So the more signatures you have, the more you have conversations with our monthly newsletter, the more you ask people to spend the time around the Seder table or after the Seder table, or spend the time with your family and let them know. And I use my own family as an example. I mean, I've used that with my 11 grandchildren, with my 3 sons and their wives and what have you. And they learn. And we thought we could use people to use donor advised funds, use legacy gifts, whatever, but make sure that carried on by the next generation. And, I think that's the real purpose of it. So it's exciting that the more we have, yes, we'll have some fallout. Yes, people won't always act the way we'd like. But the more you have, even if it falls out, it'll be gargantuan for the Jewish people and Israel in the future. That's the methodology behind.
Yeah, now I want to sort of hone in on something you just said a couple of minutes ago, Hadar, in that you spoke of only 11% of charitable dollars being donated by American Jews were going to Jewish causes. Why don't we take a step back and ask both of you to reflect on how that happened and the history of American Jews and the state of Jewish philanthropy and how it's really changed in recent decades. There are forces or at least there were forces in Jewish society that used to encourage giving to Jewish causes, as well as institutions that were founded just because Jews were excluded from secular and non-Jewish philanthropic institutions that are no longer there. How has that affected Jewish life, and how well do you think Jewish institutions have fared in coping with these changes?
Mike, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's happened is that, unfortunately, for many wealthy Jewish philanthropists, being accepted by non-Jewish charitable organizations became a goal. If you look around at the university problem, a perfect example was my relationship with Bernie. I was running his foundation for a couple of years. I got involved over 20 years ago, where basically we found out what was going on in these colleges and these universities. We spent a lot of time on the West Coast talking to philanthropists and whatever about Middle Eastern study programs. The universities were buying selling these programs to Arab money at the time. And those people were teaching our kids. We couldn't get anybody to take their money and counter that. What they did was put their names on buildings. And basically we were outsmarted. And we saw it, but nobody paid attention. It's too late when the horse was out of the barn. And basically the door was off. And you've written about that, Jonathan, and a lot. And I think the natural need, I used to always tell a story about the Maccabees and the Hellenistic desire of the people living in Israel at the time to become Hellenistic Jews. And let's become American Jews as opposed to Jewish Americans. And basically it's a natural development when you're accepted, because we weren't accepted in everything. If you look at my own personal history, there were jobs I couldn't get. There were jobs I was turned down for. My grandparents' sons changed their name from Goldberg to Gelbert so they could get a job in the 1930s. And so when that all changed, we closed our eyes and didn't do what we should have done. That's not to say that these foundations didn't give money Jewishly, but they gave much more to put their names on the buildings and much more to buy continued acceptance. And I can tell you a quote I once got from one of those foundations that said, well, I put my name on the building to show that there was a Jewish name there. But that wasn't as important as putting your money where it was going to teach Jewish kids to be proud as opposed to the name. And so I think that's what really caused this effort on my part and Hadara's part and those people who work with her on a daily basis. She's Israeli, obviously Israeli, and she knows what it's like. And her family goes back a long time. My family goes back a long time in America. My grandparents, I lived with them 16 years. They were immigrants and from Russia and Lithuania. So I grew up with it. But I fought to be assimilated also, except when I got to college, the only fraternity that would take me was a Jewish fraternity. And so I went through that. And I think the uncomfortable reality is the more we are accepted, the less we pay attention to the fact that acceptance never stays for the Jewish people. It's always something at risk to us. And Israel, we can't risk Israel because Israel is the absolute insurance of the Jewish people's survival. And so that's how we felt about it. So I hate to sound passionate, but I am very passionate about it.
Well, it's good to be passionate.
I'd like to add to that, I think in conversations that Mike and I had early on with introducing the Jewish Future Promise to our communities, many asked us, well, why do I have to give Jewishly? Isn't tzedakah giving Jewishly? If I'm already giving, why does it matter where I'm giving to as long as I'm helping humanity? And that's the reason why we say consider leaving 50% to Jewish and Israel causes, meaning we didn't say stop giving your community an important causes, but you got to consider giving Jewishly because if we Jews don't, then who will?
Yeah, exactly. And, what I was referring to, before was that A couple of generations ago, when Jews were excluded from philanthropic boards or, the museums, the symphonies, you name it, as well as country clubs and things like that, they had to form their own institutions.
That's
There were
right.
Jewish country clubs, and there were Jewish
Jason,
hospitals with
right?
Jewish doctors couldn't get jobs at the other hospitals, and there were like social pressures involved within the Jewish community saying that if you didn't give to Jewish causes, you would be sort of held accountable. Well, of course, it's good that those barriers drop, that anybody can be president of the museum or the symphony or in your case, the aquarium, right, Mike? But of course, that means that people who felt, as you say, well, I'm giving to something that's charitable. Why should I care about the Jewish community? That kind of goes in with the whole sense of, the freedom of America, which is great, was also part of why, rates of assimilation are so high and why so many drop away.
Well,
Jonathan,
Jonathan, that's why we encourage people to having family conversations. I mean, if we're concentrating on American Jewry and you look at young Americans, most don't know their story. Most don't know where their family came from. Most don't realize that when their families came here, maybe 5 generations ago, they were not citizens of the country that they came from. I mean, if we're not teaching our young ones our story, how do we expect them to know, and how do we expect them to support Jewish causes? So that's why we encourage very much to talk about Jewish values, the stories, understanding your own history in order to know where you're going.
When I was running the aquarium, I was chairman and CEO of the aquarium. We ran a 90th birthday party for Bernie Marcus. His family was there, etc. There were 900 people that showed up. The great majority were not Jews. Michael Feinstein was the entertainment for the day. At that party, we had the slides of Bernie Marcus's family pictures on the wall. Michael Feinstein and I did a duet of Yiddish Mama in that room. People were crying in that room near the song. And basically, I wanted to make sure that every non-Jew in that room knew who we were and who Bernie was. And they loved it. It was a standing ovation. And basically, I see the same thing with the evangelical community, many of which I deal with now philanthropically, because they support Israel and they love Israel. Their objective may be different in the end, but at the end, they support us. And there's 55 million of those people. If we could get the amount of Jewish support that we need to be that way, that's going to sustain us in the long term. And so that was really our job. As you know, Jonathan, many Jewish organizations have legacy programs. Some of them are relatively successful. Some of the legacy organizations, such as HAC and ADL, have trust funds that have built up over 100 years, if not that, close to 100. But the fact is, who's going to be there next and the next generation? Because as Chaim Weizmann said in his autobiography, he said, if it weren't for the Jews against me in America, Germany, France, and England, I could have had the Balfour Declaration 4 years earlier. It's in the book.
That's right. Yeah, well, the one Jewish member of the British cabinet, just a little historical note, at the time that it was issued, actually voted against it. So
correct. That's correct. And we even see that happening now. We see that happening now. You see it all the time because I read your stuff. It's happening now. So the idea of this is we wanted a movement, and it was slow going in the beginning. It was hard. Hadara would, she would talk, and we would talk about her all the time. Why can't they understand? Why can't the traditional Jewish organizations understand that we need them to use the vehicle to build their future in the organization? It's hundreds of thousands of Jewish employees that may not have signed this pledge to work in the Jewish world. Many rabbis. And I could tell you my own experience when I presented to a board of a temple about the Jewish Future Promise. I didn't walk away without a signature from a board. Didn't get it. And so I think now the more we get, the more noise we make, that we've crossed the threshold now with a 6-figure signing, that maybe more attention is going to be put to it. So I expect the progress we're going to make is going to be easier as we go forward.
Yeah, that leads naturally to my next question, which is, what do you think are the greatest challenges facing those who want to support Jewish philanthropies in Israel these days? Where is the no coming from?
Well, I think that I don't want this to be successful because of the war that started the Gaza war and what happened in October 7th. A lot of the reaction to the Jewish world's commitment since that time has been a crisis-oriented commitment. That's not what I'm interested in. I mean, I like it. I think it's fine. But at the end of the day, that commitment is going to dissipate over time because it always has in the Jewish history. All of a sudden, you're fine. Everything's over. The war is ending. Israel's making a deal with the United States and all the rest of the stuff on tariffs and all this stuff. Oh, wonderful. But at the end of the day, the promise is going to guarantee that we will be vigilant all the time.
We want to see, instead of urgency, sustainability. It's very simple.
Yeah, that's the important thing. Look, this is a very accidental situation, but last Saturday, I was not doing anything in the afternoon, and I said, I'll put on Netflix. I'll see what's on to see Netflix. And when I put it on, it said Schindler's List going off April 30th. Not going to be there anymore. And I said, gee, I saw that movie about 20 years ago. I think it was in the early 90s.
Yeah, 93.
And I said, maybe I'll take a look at it again. So I watched the first half of it. And then Saturday went out. And then, Sunday, I watched the second half of it. And it's going away April 30th. It should never go away. It should always be on Netflix. And every Jew should see it. Because basically, but they don't anymore. Most of the young Jews don't even know Schindler's List exists. It doesn't. So and I think it would be unnatural if it existed all the time. So part of what our effort is trying to do is to make sure that we're in constant contact with our community and our people, in constant contact with Israel and its problems and its difficulties and its joys, to make sure that in the future, there won't be another Schindler's List. But without that, there will be. It could be minor, it could be major, it could be October 7th, or it could be something else. There's always in our history, and you know a lot better than I do, that history. It's always happened before when we're resting, and we cannot rest. We just can't. And this was a vehicle. And if there's a disappointment, the disappointment so far has been that I think that even with 100,000, we should be much more. We should be much more, and we're going to try. We're going to try to get much more. If we get to my goal of 1 million, then I think I can rest a little bit for a while. And I'm getting up there in age. I may be resting permanently, but who knows? But Hadara will be after me. She'll follow it along for sure. So that's how I think about it. And I think we still have a lot of work to do. We're still trying to create different ways to approach it. Our youth promise is going very well. We've got many organizations. We're up to over 31,000 young people that have signed. There's no money involved in it. It's supporting the Jewish world and supporting the Jewish community. All different sections of the Jewish world, from Reform all the way to Orthodox, things like that. People were signing, young people were signing, writing letters to their future self that's in our technology that will come out and pop out again 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years, to remind them of their commitment. So basically we're working both ends of the market. We're working young people and we're working old people. And that's what we hope we're gonna do.
I'd like to add that early on, I think that when we were introducing the idea of the Jewish Future Promise, for many people, it was very difficult to understand. They wanted to know what's the catch. They weren't sure if I'm making a promise. It's not a legally binding promise. So what am I doing? What's the catch? People ran to their attorneys. I mean, we had all kinds of discussions. And the idea was this is a moral commitment for the longevity of the Jewish community. Secondly, within these family conversations, what we'd like to inspire people is to consider leaving money towards Jewish education. You know, we're fighting anti-Semitism. As you know now, millions of dollars are going to fight anti-Semitism. But every time I look out the window, there's still anti-Semitism. Sadly, I think it's always going to be there. I'm a product of anti-Semitism. My grandmother flew from the Ukraines with the Cossacks killing her brother. My father is an orphan from the Holocaust. So anti-Semitism is always going to be there. We saw on October 7th. But what we need to secure is Jewish education. We have to educate the next generation. We can't expect them to understand, to know about the Holocaust, about Jewish history, if we don't invest in their education. And I think that that's the best way of fighting anti-Semitism. And I think the Jewish Future Promise gives that opportunity for people to consider that through their family conversations and finding out what's important to them.
And now a word about our sponsors. At the heart of the Jewish people is a promise that ensures our traditions, values, and future endure for generations. The Jewish Future Promise is a movement I endorse. It is a moral commitment to securing that future. By signing the promise, we commit to keeping Jewish life vibrant and thriving for the next generation. Join me in shaping the future. Make your promise today. Sign the promise. JewishFuturePromise.org/sign the promise. Yeah, I think, for the last 30 years, we've known the three basic, sort of the three legs of the stool on which we can build a Jewish future, which is education, schools, camps, which I know you're very interested in, Mike, as well as trips to Israel, which you've also been involved in with Birthright. Yet, we still struggle to keep them fully funded. I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
We do still get sort of that resistance. Where do you think that is? Is it assimilation? Is it ignorance? Where do you think, why are we still getting resistance?
I think both.
I think it's a lack of leadership, Jonathan. I think our Jewish leadership, basically, much of it has been sustaining what they're doing. They're looking at the status quo and sustaining the status quo. Nearly 20 years ago, I was the marketing chair for the Federation out of New York City, volunteer. I met with 10 big philanthropists at the time. I was nothing like a philanthropist at all. I was just I was running a business, but I wasn't a big donor. A donor, but not a big donor. And I said, there's enough money in this room that every Jewish kid can get a K-8 education in a Jewish day school, that every kid can go to a Jewish camp, and every kid can take a trip to Israel free. They all looked at me like I was insane. But you just said it. Those are the three legs of the school. That you do that, you're guaranteeing Jewish continuity. What happened the other day with two Jewish philanthropists, when a woman was on TikTok and said, she said, I have 3 children. I want to send them to a Jewish day school. I can't afford it. And I sent it to 2 philanthropists, one David Zalek and one Jay Kamen at the Marcus Foundation. And within 30 minutes, they said, let's start a funding program and test it in Atlanta, and any Jew who wants to go will pay. Now, why can't we do that on a national basis? And then you'll build schools. And no Jewish camp's been built for 15 years in the United States. Jewish camping really, I'm a big one on Jewish camping also, because I went when I was 10 and a half years old, $250 for 8 weeks kosher. And basically, it was the first time in my life that being a Jew was fun. And I sang Hatikva in the morning, and I danced We Could with the girls. It was co-ed. And I sang songs for the Palmach and the Haganah, and I knew Israel. And my bunk name was Telchai. And every bunk was named after a settlement in Israel. I grew up with that. And there's no reason that can't be done. So part of this movement is to say, we have the money. We can sustain it. Now we need the leadership to sustain it. And billions of dollars working in anti-Semitism, I hate to say it, it's not going to do anything. It's going to go push it under the ground a little bit, but whatever it is, I want prideful Jews to stand up. I want more Jews educated, more Jews in camp, and more Jews in Israel. And many programs in Israel are going to be great. Most of them are expanding now. And I think we do that, and we're changing the basic status quo and looking at what has to be different. I don't have it in front of me, but I could pull it up about a great quote I heard about the status quo. If you want to do the status quo, you're never going to get what you want to get. You've got to keep changing and moving forward. And too much of our leadership has been buried in trying to do the same thing over and over, waiting for the crisis. Crisis disappears. They go back to doing the same thing. We can solve.
Yeah, and they're all in business for themselves, looking to support their own thing, which we understand, but it doesn't necessarily build a community.
It does. I think I'm hard pressed to say that the Jewish leadership doesn't care about the community. I think they do care about the community, but at the end of the day, they need strategies that can work. They need strategies that they can measure. And I feel sorry for the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going into this program, where the measurement of success is not going to be there. The appropriate research isn't done. The appropriate execution isn't done. It all looks good on paper and it sounds good, but the money is not changing. And
go on. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, it's fine.
I think that the whole idea of giving today is very different. I think that for many young people, it's not through the legacy organizations. I think they like to identify things that they feel a part of. They like to build things. They like to make sure that what they're giving to is aligned to their values, as opposed to just giving and not knowing where the money goes. I think that's where you see success with, online, giving. There is, the dailygiving.org. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, where you could actually give $1 a day. And it's incredible how much money they're giving to different organizations, and people feel that they know exactly where the money is going to, as opposed to just giving it to a large pool. There is another one, Israel Gives, where you can actually choose where you give your money to. I think there's a lot of change in philanthropy today, even with donor advised funds. It's not something that used to be there many years ago, where you can actually allocate your money to exactly where you want it to go, as opposed to a large legacy organization that makes the decision for you. Look at the different cities. It used to be that you had one federation, and the federation would make the decision of where the money is going to. Today, in most cities, you can decide where you want to give your money to, not necessarily to a federation. You want to support a school, you'll support the school. You want to support whatever you might want to support, you're able to do. And then again, with online giving, I think that, we used to sort of give during galas and events. And today you simply go online and you choose what you'd like to do. And I think there's more transparency today that people are looking for, as opposed to just giving and not knowing where the money goes to. So there's a lot of change in that. And I think that the Jewish Future Promise gives people the opportunity to make these decisions as a family of where they want to give the money to. We encourage them to having conversations of what's important to them as a family. What do they want their family legacy to be, where they involve the whole family in giving. I think that's part of our main goal.
Yeah, I think the ability to sort of adjust to this new environment. Now, people do feel that they have a right to have transparency, to give exactly where they want. They don't want to be part of a consensus-driven, which is we used to be a magic word in the Jewish community. where, a committee would sit down and say, well, this is what's good for the community to give to these causes, and that's where you should give your money. They want to decide that for themselves. Of course, the downside to that is that also means that there is no consensus, that the money gets diffused. But the point is, we want to encourage Jews to give to Jewish causes and to focus on that, as opposed to to non-Jewish ones, which are fine, but aren't actually going to build a Jewish future.
Well, I think in transparency, it makes the organization actually become better. Mm-hmm. In order to make sure that they sustain the gift from the particular family or the person, they have to make sure that their dollars work, opposed to just sort of go and pay salaries and do all kinds of things and not end up doing what their mission is and what they're promising their community that they're doing.
You can simplify it a little bit too. I think that the leadership of the Jewish world, both lay leadership and professional leadership, worked to guarantee Jewish continuity. We'd start from the very beginning, from preschool all the way up through education, camping, and tripsation. There are many other things that they have to support. You have to support poor Jews. You have to support different situations with Jewish family services and these organizations, the disabled kids and things like that they support. They still do that. At the end of the day, fundamentally, if you want prideful Jews to carry on that stuff, you have to fill those three legs of the stool that you said. That's. But I'm old enough to remember when there was no state of Israel, and we were on our own in America, and basically like all the other diaspora Jews. The state of Israel, starting in 1947 with the partition, in 1948 with the Declaration of Independence, gave Jews not only did it give us the pride of Israel, but it also gave a lot of the non-Jews pride in Israel when we started to win wars and do these kinds of things. The image of the Jew was totally different in America, sure.
That's a very important point, because I think historically we know, and you're just telling us, that the creation of the state of Israel, made every Jew, whether they were religious or non-religious, Zionist or non-Zionist, sort of stand a little bit taller, and made the non-Jewish world respect the Jewish world more. But we live in an environment now in which a lot of the coverage from the media and of Jewish issues, and very specifically Israel, has impacted the self-image of Jews, as well as their attitudes toward Jewish life. How is this affecting philanthropy aimed, as you hope, to ensure the Jewish future?
I think that with the pride in Israel back in the 40s, the late 40s and 50s, and going all the way through the 73 war and the Yom Kippur War and all the rest of the 67 war and all that, the pride now it sort of was taken for granted. But when you see different situations in Israel that you don't agree with, the political differences, things like that and whatever, it's not dissimilar to what we have in our own country. I mean, we have the same conflicts between left and right, or center left and center right, and all this kind of stuff going on. They're human beings, but the way I treat it and look at Israel is it's part of my family. It's part of my family. My family has disagreements politically. It's always going to be that way. But we need Israel and the United States both to survive. So this is my discussion. It goes on all the time, no matter who the president is, and no matter what party's in power. But I think at the end of the day, when you look, it's an interesting example. I had dinner with two people in Atlanta. The person was a former lay president of the Jewish Federation, very active Jew, and his wife was working part-time for Jewish Family Services. She'd retired. And it happened right after the pager incident in Lebanon. And I brought it up. I said, this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in a military situation. And both of those people didn't like it. They said, well, I'm not sure it's appropriate to do that, whatever it is. And I said, but why? Would you rather have bombs dropped and killing hundreds of thousands of people who are not military? But they took a different point of view. But we're Jews. We're always going to have different points of view. But at the end of the day, I felt that in the military history, that particular incident will go down as extraordinary in terms of not having casualties, civilian casualties, things of that kind. So I was very proud of it. And I think that I can deal with different opinions on different situations. But at the end of the day, we have to be here. There's only 15 million of us. And basically there's 8 billion people in the world. I want people to understand the contribution of the Jewish people. We're nothing, 0.12 or something of the world's population. And look what we've done. Look what Israel has done in 75 years. It's unbelievable. And every Jew should feel proud about it. It's not that they can't disagree, but be proud about it. And so the promise is designed to keep that state and to keep people in mind of what we are and who we are and what we've accomplished. And that's what we're doing. I mean, I think we start our 5th year in February, if I'm not mistaken. And I can't keep counting
March, no.
But I feel when people say to me, "Key, there's 100,000 signatures," that's terrific. I say it's not good enough. We still have to get more. And Hadara can tell you, because I always talk about doing strategic changes, and so does she. How can we change? How can we do better? We're not going to sit and continue to do what we've done in the past and expect the result to be the same, to get better. It doesn't. So that's our role, and that's what we work on.
Right. Now, we've already noted October 7th, 2023, and we know that that's impacted Jewish life everywhere. How do you think it impacted those who are working for the Jewish future and giving to the causes you want to see supported? We know that, within the core of the Jewish community, there was a rallying around the flag during an emergency, but the aftermath of October 7th and the subsequent war has, created a lot of negative feedback and a lot of attacks on Israel. How is that impacting the campaign to support Jewish philanthropy?
Well, I think that from my perspective, I think that it has impacted favorably the philanthropy in terms of people are giving all the time. And so many organizations have started up in Israel and to support Israel and fight anti-Semitism. The problem I see with that is that the money is not being directed, in my mind, where the results can be measured of effectiveness. It's one thing to be able to have sent. My wife went to Israel and picked fruit, volunteered because they didn't have people to pick the fruit anymore. He did those kinds of things. I think that's absolutely fine in helping Israel rebuild its situation. But at the end of the day, my fear is that when the crisis is over, and it will be over, hopefully sooner than later, that will return to doing the same things they've done before, unless they redirect the money to be able to measure the results of what they're doing. And I look at Bob Kraft's program. He spent over $100 million. He's a wonderful Jew. He used to sit in the synagogue with Sheldon Adelson, who was my boss, on Yom Kippur in Newton, Massachusetts, all the time. And they used to talk about, Israel and all this. And he's a great Jew. But I look at the program and I say, what really are we accomplishing? What really are we accomplishing? Are we making the change that's necessary to build a foundation for the future with that money? And so
the anti-Semitism response. Well, I did criticize his Super Bowl ad, but so I'm on record on that. So.
Nobody
just think if that money went towards education.
There was a couple of Super Bowl ads, $8 million, but it's right. That once again, you fall into the trap of saying you want to help, but you got to be careful about helping to make sure that there's an end result you're looking for. And measuring that result. One of the things that Charles Bronfman did when he started Birthright, he started researching the trips with an organization out of Brandeis University. Len Sachs was the guy doing it. For 25 years, they've been doing research on the people who go on Birthright. So you can see, you can feel and touch the results. The results are in marriage. The results are charitable giving. The results are in out marriage, what the children are, all these kinds of things that you can factually do that. What Kraft could have done is measure the attitude of certain populations to what he was doing to see if it was working. I'd never seen any results of that kind of situation. So I think that I'm not here to try to criticize or say anything like that. The reaction to help Israel and the Jewish people has been enormous after October 7th. My problem with it is, it shouldn't take October 7th to get the reaction. That's all.
Hadara, how have you seen the
Well, I think that
7th
most
work?
people used to think that us Jews were doing fine. There's no reason to worry about us. We should worry about others and give towards others. And October 7th was a collective trauma where it rekindled the sense of peoplehood. People are giving more Jewishly. And I think that people are rethinking what they've lost thinking for the last 30 years. I know that I've been involved in different programs and people just used to say now, like, for instance, what was happening on campuses, it's been going on for 20 or 30 years, but people just didn't want to deal with it. And all of a sudden now this gave a big wake up. And I think that it's going to be a surge in Jewish giving. But as Mike said, I think that it's going to be a surge in rethinking. How do we support our community? How do we educate our community? I think more people woke up and see the need for it. I mean, we shall see the future. That's what we're working towards. But I think that that's a part of a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've already referenced the reception that Jewish Future Promise has been given in the organized Jewish world, as well as from individuals who've heard about it. But one of the more interesting aspects of this effort is your success in actually getting some support from Christians. I noted just yesterday that actress Patricia Heaton, who is not Jewish, although a great supporter of Israel, became the Jewish Future Promise's 100,000 signer. This seems to be a natural outgrowth of the strong support for Israel and anger about Israel being attacked from many American Christians. Yet a lot of American Jews are historically very suspicious about aligning themselves with Christian conservatives with whom they may disagree on some domestic issue. Why is it important to welcome people like Patricia Heaton into the fold, and why is this really important to the Jewish future as well?
Well, first of all, we need all the support we can get. I mean, to be quite frank with you, I see what people write when they make the Jewish Future Promise, and I read what our Christian friends are writing, and it really, it couldn't touch me more. They care about Israel. They're so frustrated in what's going on in the news and social media and the way the story is being told and the way lies are being made. And they're basically want to make sure that Israel is able to sustain itself. It's just incredible. I mean, look at what Patricia and what she's done. She started a whole organization supporting Israel, waking up Christians that are listening to lies, trying to tell them the true story. I think Israel is a very tiny little country. We need all the support we can get. So we at the Jewish Future Promise are certainly open to our Christian friends and their support. And
Jonathan,
we constantly get it. I
have a couple of interesting comments on this. As a business person, if I wanted to sell Israel on a positive basis, there are 55 million evangelicals in the United States and Canada. There's 7 million Jews. If I were allocating my resources, where would I go? Okay, think about that for a minute. It's a very interesting scenario. I'm having lunch on Friday with Susan Michael. She works for the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. She's based in the United States. And we're talking about things because she's having a Seder on April 14th, after the Seder days, for her people, to teach them the Hebraic, by her quote, the Hebraic language and the purpose of the Exodus and everything else. Now, these people, most of them are our friends. And we haven't done any work there. I went to a Kufi thing 15, 20 years ago. And I met Reverend Hagee and his wife when I worked in Vegas with Sheldon. And these people are our friends. They want Israel to survive. And there's so many of them. There's so many of them. And we're just a tiny minority. So basically, I don't understand why we haven't been more friends with them. Why we haven't opened more communication with them. And I know Israel does some of that. They do work. They have a museum for them now, and Israel is doing that. My cousin who runs a tour business in Israel, actually only does Christian tours. And I asked him, why do you only do Christian tours? He said, they don't complain. So,
Yeah, that sounds right.
Jonathan, your question is very relevant. Just yesterday, I was asked from the
yeah,
Christian community, how come we don't do the
yeah,
Israel Future Promise for the Christian community that wants to support Israel? And that's something that actually Mike and I are talking about.
you know, that's another opportunity for from a business standpoint. It's another opportunity to get Israel support. And, but that's not really what our job has been. But, I think that they're there behind us. I've been to a number of dinners and a number of situations where I've been one of 6 Jews out of 1,000 people at the dinner. And I've seen that stuff happen. I've seen it's a very sincere belief in why Israel is important to survive. And
well, not only that, I mean, you see them at Jewish organizations. JNF has a nice number of non-Jews supporting it. FIDF has a great number of non-Jews supporting it. I mean, they've always been there.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's absolutely right.
but we can't depend on them, but we should be able to understand that they're our friends. Knowing who your friends are is very, very important. And
True.
and I think you can't walk away from that situation. And basically, and the same thing in the Jewish community. I mean, we need the Jewish community to embrace the problems that we have and embrace it together. But at the end of the day, it's going to depend on the leadership. The leadership is everything.
Very right. That's quite true. Now, you've both been involved in a number of Jewish initiatives, as well as Jewish Future Promise. What are the experiences and accomplishments involved with charitable giving that impacted you the most, as well as the ones that you're proudest of?
Well, I think if I had a, I mean, it's going to be redundant to say the things I'm most proud of is when I've supported the Jewish education at the day school level. Most important to me has been the Jewish camping, and most important to me has been trips to Israel. And I think that doesn't mean that I don't spend money. I don't spend my money helping Jews in need or anything like that. But the majority of my greatest feelings have come from protecting those 3 items that you talked about earlier in the conversation. And I just met with Giddy Mark, the CEO of Birthright, last night for dinner and this morning. And his volunteer program has been absolutely amazing, what he's done. And I've been on that board for, I don't know, I'm an honorary member now because I don't like board meetings anymore. But when we were doing 48,000 kids, we did 48,000 a couple of years after I got there. And the results are fantastic. And by the way, they struggled for funds. They struggled for funds because Shelter was giving a lot of money. He said, I need help from other foundations. And they try to work the other foundations as his money has gone down after he passed away. It's still there, but not in the way it was before. So why not get the support of more elements of the Jewish community that help those 3 aspects of the Jewish world? And I mean, when you're doing philanthropic work, I mean, you can get great joy from helping them feed the hungry Jews. There's organizations that do that. And so, but I think that if I had to look at the giving that I do, which is multiple organizations, the ones that are most successful in Jewish continuity are the ones that I would. The others I do because I'm part of a community. So I give to the Federation in South Palm Beach. I give to the Federation in Atlanta because that's basically my home. And I don't get involved in the management or the direction of it. It's a community gift and I just participate. But the ones that give me a great feeling of accomplishment are in those 3 areas.
I think that that's where Mike and I aligned. To me, Jewish education, Israel education is the most important to our people. I think everything else will come along. But if we don't teach our children pride of who we are and where we come from, I don't think that there is a place to go. So I would align with that. And then I just wanted to mention something that Mike spoke about regarding the Jewish Youth Promise that we started several years ago.
Yes, please tell us about that.
Basically, the idea of the Jewish Youth Promise is not a philanthropical idea, but it's more of being a part of the Jewish story. So the Jewish Youth Promise really targets students from the ages of 13 till 24, where they are asked to make a promise to be a part of the Jewish story. And at that time, they write a letter to their older self to see where they want to see themselves within the Jewish story. The letter goes into a time capsule, into a cloud. Every 2 years, they receive a reminder of their experience at that particular organization, whether it was a school, a camping program, a youth program, birthright. It reminds them of their experience. Every 5 years, they get to see the letter, and the letter goes away. And in 20 years, they receive the letter. At that point, the organization has an opportunity to reach out to the student, at that time an adult, and give them the opportunity to pay it forward, whether it's volunteering, whether it's in giving charity towards the organization and making sure that they're paying it forward for the next generation to be able to go through the experience. And we did that because when we looked at alumni programs for Jewish organizations, there was really nothing there. So you went through a Jewish camp, you went through a Jewish day school, but 20 years later, the organization wasn't in touch with you. And this gives the organization the opportunity to stay in touch with the students, but through their own memory, as opposed to asking them to give or asking them to do something. You're connected to them through their memory. And we've been rather successful. We have more than 70 partner organizations, some of the largest organizations within the Jewish world. And we're looking to grow it. We think that every Jewish student should have the opportunity to write a letter to their older self. It's fun, and hopefully it will be fruitful for the next generation.
We should see.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
You should see some of these letters. I ought to send you some of the letters that you get, that we got. I sponsored some trips for Yehudi, which is a college organization in Florida, Morocco and Poland and whatever. And they brought me a book. We don't own it. The organization that's part of it actually owns the letters. We can't see the names for privacy purposes, but they sent me a book with the letters from the trip to Morocco without the names of the people, or just in a booklet. And what they're saying about being Jewish and all this kind of stuff from the trip. And they'll get that letter 2, 5 years later, and they'll be potential donors for this organization. And and also they'll carry that with them. When I was in AZA as a young person in Boston, I never heard from B'nai B'rith ever again after I was in AZA. This is an area for B'nai B'rith or BBYO or whatever the organization is, stay in touch with me, and I will stay in touch with it over the years. So it's a very interesting situation.
Yeah,
and
that's a great idea. And I think it's a great note to end on. Mike and Hadara, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your insights about Jewish philanthropy and ensuring the Jewish future. We also want to thank our audience. Please remember to tune in every day for Jonathan Tobin Daily Edition. And whether you're listening to us on one of the various podcast platforms or watching us live on Facebook or X or on the JNS YouTube channel, please like and or subscribe to JNS, click on the bell for notifications, and give us good reviews. Please write to us at thinktwice@jns.org and let us know where you listen or watch the show and what you think about it. Also a reminder that JNS's inaugural International Policy Summit will be held later this month in Jerusalem. Click the link in the description below to request registration in order to attend. And remember, keep reading and thinking for yourself, and we'll see you again next week. And thanks again to our sponsors, the Jewish Future Promise. Sign the promise at jewishfuturepromise.org/sign the promise.